Hi, welcome everybody. We're just going to wait a minute or so for everybody's screens to load up before we start. Shouldn't take long. We'll just give it maybe 30 seconds to a minute. It's still early, so people might just be getting up and joining us in a bit. Okay, we should probably make a start. Hi everybody, welcome to the Peabody Online Jobs and Apprenticeship Fair. My name's Nikki, I work for Peabody. Oops, sorry. And today we're joined by Jamie Fitch, who's the Senior Development Consultant from Goodman Masson, and he will be delivering today's session. The event's being recorded and will be made available on the Peabody YouTube channel, and we'll also be sharing Jamie's slides, so there's no need to scribble it all down unless you particularly want to. We'll hear from Jamie before opening up for Q&A. So if you do have any questions you want to ask them, please pop them in the Q&A box and we'll try and answer them all. There's also a chat function available. If you'd like to leave comments, please do. And before we start, I'd like to say a particular welcome to everybody, but especially to Peabody residents who are joining us. We have a one-to-one career service that's completely free to access for them. More information is available on our website. You can get help with things like CV writing, how to search better for jobs, and even prepare for an interview. As I said, it's completely free, so all you need to do is get in touch with us via our website. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Jamie. Jamie, over to you.
Morning all, hope we're all keeping well. So my name's Jamie, as sort of introduced, sort of over by Nicola. I've been a consultant for 4 years. I now work at sort of Goodman Masson. I cover specialist sort of markets, working quite closely with housing associations and local authorities. And within that sort of piece, I've sort of gained a lot of experience around sort of CV writing. So sort of that's what I wanted to go through with you guys today. Just sort of some tips and sort of hints and tips around sort of how we can sort of write a great CV and get noticed by employers. So I think to sort of go on to the next sort of content of the sort of introduction of what we'll be looking at today. So on the next slide, we'll be looking at sort of pre-CV writing research, how to structure and stand your CV out to the sort of marketplace, to sort of people like recruiters like myself, and also to the sort of direct employers, how to format your CV for a professional look, how to make that sort of really stand out and eye-catching, and how to write a profile that will grab the attention of an employer. And the last point we'll sort of go on to is how to detail work experience in education. So that's sort of quite a thing. So why should you care? Recruiters, we spend an average of 6 seconds reviewing a CV. I can probably tell you the amount of CVs, it's astronomical, the numbers that we sort of see in terms of especially the way the marketplace has been over the last 9 months, as sort of everything sort of coming sort of back into play. So something you really need to sort of target is employer recruiters to navigate and find the information. So we need to sort of find that information as quickly as possible. So that's where we need to make that stand out. So formatting tips. Choose and maintain a crisp font and color throughout. So something that I've seen and that we sort of recommend, colors sort of make sure sort of it's quite sort of to the point, sort of black sort of scribing colors on there. Avoid sort of like Comic Sans. I'd recommend sort of using fonts of Calibri or Canberra. They really sort of stand out. They're nice and clear, and they sort of keep to a maximum of around sort of 2 pages. You don't want to sort of overexert that to 2 pages. You just want to get to the key deliverables, which we'll sort of touch on in more detail. Bold out headings to divide the sections of your CV. So to bold these headings out, sort of have your sort of clear name, sort of like your clear sort of job titles that you've had, key dates and sort of organizations that you've worked for. These really differentiate and sort of there's something that's sort of really eye-catching to recruiters like myself and also direct employers. So on pre-CV writing research, one thing that I would recommend is obviously Google your desired job title. So if you Google the job title, there'll be a number of things that come up, but within specific sort of researching the most regular sort of candidate requirements. So things are forever evolving in the job marketplace, which sort of continuously appear within your own industry. So once you sort of Google search your sort of key sort of word searches that your sort of desired job title, you can see sort of job descriptions, sort of key deliverables in terms of the demand for skills and knowledge for sort of target roles. You really want to sort of focus your CV around these, and these will sort of really sort of enhance the CV and make it stand out sort of from sort of other mainstream sort of standard CVs that are out there. So they'll be really eye-catching to the sort of employer and sort of the recruiter to sort of really get a key understanding of the requirements that have matched from sort of the briefs that we receive. Also, that your requirement as a sort of person putting a CV in to match that up and tailor it. So coming on to tailoring your CV, something you really want to sort of have is industry sort of specific knowledge. So pre-CV writing research, at the top of the sort of page, how you want to sort of format it, you sort of have your name and contact details. You'll easily see how to sort of contact you. So you want to have your name up there, your sort of like contact details in terms of a telephone number and a sort of email address. And then you want to sort of put a small sort of paragraph in around your CV sort of profile, just to make that sort of eye catching of like what you are and how your sort of profile matches to sort of the job specification. The next section you want to put on is key and relevant skills. So key skills that you sort of have within your sort of career and throughout your career, and the relevant skills that are sort of tailored to that job specifically. This will sort of really stand out at the top of the page and give sort of key sort of answers to sort of us as employers to sort of look and drill down on sort of key sort of deliverables on your CV compared to sort of what the job requires. Your work experience. So this is quite a vital part. You don't want to sort of over sort of kill this side of things. You want to sort of go around about 5 to sort of 6 sort of bullet points around sort of key dates, job titles, companies, and then just a key summary of sort of achievements that you've done within that work experience, matching that off obviously against a job description or matching that off against the job that you're actually applying for. So some key sort of work experience on there. And then obviously as you sort of go down the CV, we can sort of build a sort of story around that and build a picture around your sort of experience and how your career sort of gone over the sort of years and the sort of time you sort of spent in roles, whether there's been promotions within that or you sort of stepped up to a level or sort of moved sort of to another company. We can sort of really see sort of your experience and gauge sort of how well you're equipped for the role. So education, this is quite sort of a big one as well. We can sort of see your education quality. So we can see sort of employers look for sort of education qualifications for certain roles, whether this sort of be sort of at a sort of school leaver level or sort of any sort of enhanced sort of coming out of sort of university or anything like that. There will be some sort of education to show the employer sort of how sort of educated you are to a certain standard that they may require for certain roles. So to meet that criteria would be something that would really sort of enhance the application and sort of your CV to stand out. Qualifications. So in my area of business, I work on sort of like the construction sort of side of things. There's a few sort of qualifications that people go out and get personally. And there's also qualifications that they've been sponsored for in the past. And these are really sort of stand out to show commitment to the role and commitment to the industry that you're in, and also commitment to sort of your understanding of the role. So these qualifications really sort of stand out and can really be sort of abbreviated on the sort of CV towards the sort of bottom of the page as we're sort of telling that story from the top to the bottom. So that's around sort of the pre-CV writing sort of research, the key things that you sort of want to gauge and sort of put in towards the CV. So if we go on to the next part, section by section. So contact details, you want to place your name and job title, as we said before, at the top of the page. Make these contact details bold so they aren't missed, so they really stand out. So as soon as we receive the CV, the first thing we'll look for is a name and the contact details. One do's and don'ts on that. I would say telephone number is a must. Obviously, you need to be contactable. So some people obviously don't have mobiles. You can put sort of a number that you can be reached through that. Email address, that's a function that sort of we use a lot to reach out to people, and that's something that makes sure you sort of really, when you do the email address, if you do have a hyphen on there, make sure when you actually go back and check that it's not just pre-populated, and also you can also click on that actual link, and that will take that sort of direct sort of CV to a sort of source of contact that we can get the right email. Location, that's quite key. So as recruiters, it saves us a sort of lot of time and the employer a lot of time, whether or not sort of like if you're sort of distance in terms of sort of like close to the offices or where you're sort of located, or if you're willing to sort of relocate. That's a really sort of key tool to see where people are sort of located in sort of locality to the job. So the job may sort of well be covering a certain area, and if you're sort of within that area, it may be easily accessible to someone that may be more further away. But that's something that we can sort of go down and sort of a discussion that can be sort of had, hence why we've got the contact details. Some of the don'ts you want to put on there, never put your full address on there. That just doesn't need to be put on there at this time, because you just need to sort of have that location. Date of birth, once again, that doesn't need to be on to a CV. That doesn't has a requirement or anything like that. It doesn't affect any application. And then also your marital status as well. That doesn't affect anything as well. So that doesn't require. And I have seen CVs in the past with photos. I would sort of come away from that, because what you want to do is obviously have that element of when you do meet and for an interview, you've put the name to the face, and they've got to build up a picture, and then you meet them on the sort of first contact, and that's really powerful in terms of sort of with the CV to not have any photo, just keep it sort of nice and clean and sort of straight going. So moving on to sort of the CV profile. So designed to catch the eye of the person reading your CV. So one of the examples we put sort of at the top is they're a Prince 2 qualified results driven project support officer with sound knowledge of GDPR and experience in delivering large scale multi-million pounds in the food retail industry. That gives the person who's reading your CV a good sort of eye catching, right? Okay, this person's qualified in a certain area of business. They have a sound knowledge of a certain sort of algorithm that they sort of can read, and they have experience. Some of the key sort of buzzwords in there will sort of really sort of stand out, and also they've relatively said they're in the food industry. So if there was a job that someone was applying for within that industry, you can see they've got relevant experience within that field. So also, I would say have an overview of sort of industry specific skills. So sort of tailor that up. That comes back to sort of like the Google searching, sort of looking at sort of a job description and really sort of tailoring that to the sort of CV, really tailoring that to your specific sort of skill set and how relevant that is to the actual job. That will really sort of enhance your sort of CV and really make it stand out. Qualifications, we've touched on that already. We sort of really want to sort of home in on that if you do have any qualifications, or if you're working towards anything, whether that may be relevant to the job or not. That shows sort of a really good sort of prowess in terms of sort of taking time to sort of really upskill yourself in terms of certain sort of areas. And also the benefits that you'd bring, to the role, how you can sort of achieve and what you have achieved in previous sort of career sort of stuff, or even if you're stepping into your first job, what you can bring in terms of sort of like your skills and your sort of understanding of the benefits that you would sort of add value to that company. So 2 tips of the overview: keep it short, keep it quite punchy and to sort of precise to the point. You don't want to put sort of like sentences in there and massive paragraphs. You want to sort of avoid sort of cliche and like vague terms, saying like you're a good team player. That's quite a generic thing for people to read. I think the things that you sort of want to make it role specific. So a key sort of example of that would be how great you are at something. So give a sort of positive example, a time that I have achieved. That's something that I've seen a lot in CVs when people say the word "I have achieved" or start off the sentence with that, or "I achieved this," or "I achieved that," and how you did it. So that's something that really stands out on the sort of CV side of things that really sort of employers sort of look for and really stands out. So on to the next slide. Key skills. So you want to give a sort of really detailed snapshot of what you can offer to the sort of employer. Them key skills will really sort of be the sort of make people read on. So when you have them key skills in sort of delivering, that will really sort of enhance your CV. Make sure these are bullet pointed. You want to keep them sort of easily sort of digested, so little snippets of info. What you don't want to do is give the whole sort of thing away. So when we have a look at sort of the snippets, it makes us want to read more, and it makes us more engaged to sort of really sort of, okay, I want to find out more about this person, and I want to sort of home in on them skills. And that's one thing at the top of the CV. When the skills are there, it's a tick box to obviously against the JD. Okay, I need to read on and find out more about this person with their experience, because they've got the key skills, but obviously there's obviously the deliverable side of things as well. So yeah, easily digest snippets of info. It doesn't need to be sort of, again, sort of paragraphs. Just saying that you're strong in a field, that really goes a long way, or you've got a strong experience. A lot of people fall sort of down on this side where they sort of said they have exposure, I've seen, or they said they've got experience within it. But if you come sort of really sort of forward with it and really sort of like a good knowledge, a strong sort of stakeholder engagement is a real sort of key one, that sort of people look for. So yeah, sort of really sort of get them keywords in there, sort of like a good knowledge and really sort of strong aspects of these skills, instead of sort of saying generic, I've got MS Office skills, or I'm efficient on Word. I think sort of really put a word in before you say about these skills that's really heavily sort of tailored to your target roles. So yeah, so moving on to the next slide, sort of on the sort of work experience. So looking at your career history, so at the top of the page, after your skills, I would definitely sort of arrange it in sort of most recent to least recent. More detail in the recent roles, because that's obviously what you've done at that time. So something you want to sort of have at the top. Make sure you bold your career history, so it sort of distinguishes obviously to the next sort of thing to read on. I would definitely sort of have sort of like the name of the company that you've worked for, and as you can see by the example at the top, literally have the sort of role, and then obviously I would probably put underneath then the dates that you were there. This gives the sort of people that look at your CVs a good sort of overview of your sort of dates of employment, how long you've sort of been in that role, obviously the type of role you've had. If you've had any promotions within that, obviously you can put that in as well, and make sure you sort of key date that area of business as well. So with the sort of most recent roles you've done, I would probably say within the sort of last 5 years, I would really sort of put more detail in them recent roles. And then as you sort of work down your CV to the sort of older roles that you've worked, just put in some key sort of deliverables, and it will be in less detail, because obviously employers want to see what we've done most recently. Um, so yeah, list the responsibilities that you had, and how you sort of achieved something with them. So how you've maybe supported a team, or you've achieved something, and sort of how you've really sort of responsible on that side of things. No more than 5 to 10 bullet points per role. You don't really, like I said earlier, I probably most CVs I've sort of sent and seen over my lifetime, and sort of analysed and sort of gone back, and my own CV as well has no more than about 5 to 8. I think that sort of gives you a really sort of good overview, where you sort of been, and sort of you can sort of tell a story with that. So yeah, round off each role, something that's really sort of good at the end. The last bullet point, so as you read through the bullet points, it tells that story of what you've achieved, your sort of everything you've done within that role, and then round it off with an achievement. So we've all achieved something within our career. We've all sort of achieved that throughout our lifetime. So that's something that you can see as an employer and as a recruiter. I can see, okay, this person's done everything, and they've also achieved something at the end of it. So on the education and qualification side of things, obviously this will also be dependent on experience level. So it's important to showcase your qualifications, educations as more inexperienced job seeker. So that can sort of give the sort of overview of where sort of candidates sort of sit in the market, what the sort of criteria is, if there's certain sort of parameters that they need to sort of really sort of understand and get a more of a gauge. So for more sort of like experienced candidates, it's important to be sort of selective and pinpoint your key qualifications for each role. I can't stress how vital sort of that is in certain markets. So make sure you sort of that data is really accurate as well. The last thing you want to do is sort of put something in there that sort of like you think you're more sort of senior on, and then obviously the job role, you don't want to sort of go into a job role where you're sort of struggling with that, which believe me, I've seen in the past. But yeah, really sort of home in on them qualifications and sort of like your education history, sort of that gives you a good sort of overview of where people have sort of done, what you've achieved throughout your sort of early stages of learning, and sort of where them qualifications are at. So one of the top tips, make sure you've tailored the content to your role that you're applying for. This is probably one of the most things that people tend to sort of not understand fully. So one of the things you want to sort of really sort of look at is, once again, Google search the job role, job roles that you want to go for. Make sure you're really sort of tailored the content to your role. So most people I speak to probably have they have a generic CV that's just a standard CV that they sort of have that's sort of generic, and then what they would do is obviously tailor that CV, tweak it to sort of certain job criteria that they're sort of keen for and their skill set matches. So make sure you sort of really sort of keep a generic CV that you can constantly sort of update. And then you can sort of add sort of key achievements or key sort of deliverables and add sort of bullet points in, and sort of tailor that CV then to certain jobs that sort of that you're doing your research on. So make sure you've researched the job role that you're applying for. Have a look at sort of other companies that have the same role and how they look and how they operate, and make sure your criteria is there. That's one of the biggest top tips we can actually give you as sort of recruiters, and sort of understanding sort of the market. So a lot of people have a generic CV which gives an understanding, but making sure you sort of do your research and tailor that. Make sure sort of spelling and there's a grammar check done. Ask a friend. Listen, I still see I have to ask people in my business to sort of look over sort of stuff that I sort of put together. And I look over stuff that they put together. It's always good to get a sort of second opinion on things, making sure sort of there's spelling and sort of grammar. You can also use a site called grammarly.com that can sort of really sort of home in on your grammar. You can put sort of sentences in there, and it will sort of automatically sort of auto correct stuff for you, so you can make sure the content reads correctly when we're reading it. So yeah, that's on that part of things. So any questions? I noticed there's a few in the Q&A sort of side of things.
Yep. Should we go to those now, Jimmy?
Yeah, feel free, yeah. So
okay, we have about 20 minutes to grill Jamie, so please keep the questions coming. I'll read them out to you, Jamie, if that's okay, and
yeah,
you can just concentrate on the answers for us. Okay, the first one, regarding the font, color and graphics, is it okay to experiment and use different styles if you're applying for a creative role?
I think it depends. I would probably stick to the fonts that we mentioned earlier. I think what you don't want to do is overlook at a CV, and I've seen it before where people have been very creative and loads of sort of text boxes, and people have put loads of graphics in there, and it's quite hard then to focus on the actual content of the CV. By all means, I would definitely experiment around it, but always ask someone to have a look at it and look at the CV and really sort of analyze that. And get a good sort of picture whether or not. So you want it to be clear and precise and to the point. So coming back to that font and color, I would come away from probably color side of things. I would keep it quite generic and quite plain and bold. On the font, you can definitely play around with that as long as you sort of got an understanding that it's clear and precise. Graphics, I have seen graphics, so it depends on the role, and it also depends on the job that you're applying for. So some people put sort of case studies at the bottom of their CV, if that's sort of required in the role, or they sort of put some graphics, if, especially in my sort of expertise that I cover in terms of construction, people will put some sort of pictures of like construction schemes that they've worked on, with a little sort of blurb on that. But it all depends again on the sort of job role and sort of obviously what you're applying for. I think that's where sort of like you want to sort of get to the point, make sure the person understands your key skills, and also make sure it's clear and precise.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Sorry, Jamie. Next question, is more than 3 pages for a CV too much?
Ideally, I would say 2 pages. I have seen CVs with 3 pages, and it all depends again on the job role. I think personally, 2 pages is more than enough because that will sort of understand your career history. And obviously, I know if people have longer careers or sort of have sort of key things that the sort of job description or the job they're applying for entails a lot more skills or a lot more sort of content that can be expanded. But I would go no more than 3, if I'm honest. 2 is the minimum, and I'd say 3 is the maximum on that side.
Okay, thank you. Next question here. Can I include a section on my hobbies? How long can it be? I don't have much work experience, but I'd like to talk about my interests.
Yes, 100%. 100%. I would definitely put some hobbies and interests in there. Once again, I'd probably leave it no more than about sort of 4 or 5 bullet points on each sort of area. So obviously, yeah, definitely talk about your interests. That's something that sort of employers, obviously, we love to read that. Once again, that builds up a picture of you sort of being maybe like a good cultural fit to teams, and sort of bringing in sort of someone that sort of can really sort of slot into the team and really sort of yeah, sort of be a part of that team. And sort of, yeah, there may be some sort of key events. So some of my sort of key interests and hobbies are around sort of sport. So where I work at Goodman Masson, we have like a sports sort of, we play football every Wednesday, and I'm quite a big football fan. So that's one of my hobbies. So when I did start at Goodman Masson, they were like, "Oh, you've played football. Would you like to be part of this Wednesday club that they have?" So you feel engaged straight away. So I would definitely, yeah, that definitely include a section on your hobbies, and how long it can be. Going back to that, no more than 4 to 5 bullet points, I would say. And then talk about your interests as well. So it's always a good read at the end, because you've gone very sort of content heavy in terms of your career. Let's get to know you as a person as well.
Yeah, I think that's important too. Next question, this one's from Liz. Good morning. How much details of your work experience should you put in on the CV, i.e. up to the last 10 years? What if you're missing gaps on your CV? How do you define this?
So good question, Liz. So this is something that's sort of been quite common over the sort of last 2 years, especially with everything that's sort of gone through. So details of work experience. To tie up the last 10 years, I would probably look at the last 5 years and have the key sort of bullet points like we touched on, round about sort of 6 to 8 bullet points. And then a case of sort of looking at your career and summary over 10 years. If there's for the next 5 years, I would literally just put the role title, the date you had it, and the actual company you worked for. But I would say most companies look at the sort of last 5 years. So you can definitely put them on there. I wouldn't go probably further back than that, because then you can just read job roles and you're reading dates and times. But yeah, listen, I would, if you feel like you, depending on the job you're applying for, you really want to sort of yeah, get the first 5 years under your belt. But obviously, if you've worked in that job for 5 years and you've worked in another job, say for 2 years, and another one for 2 and 1, it would definitely be worth putting them in as sort of the key deliverables that you've done. So it depends on how many jobs you've had throughout that 10-year process. Normally, you'd sort of probably put the first 5 years on, and then sort of maybe a little bit more content around, depending on how many jobs you've had within that time. And missing gaps on CV, to define this, something that sort of we've noticed in the market, there has been a few career gaps in the sort of last 2 years. So be honest, be transparent with it as much as you can possibly. And then obviously I would definitely put the dates that you sort of had either a career break or you was out of work, put put the reason in there. Don't be scared to put a reason in there, unless obviously you want to disclose that. If it's sort of personal circumstances, you definitely sort of say to be sort of discussed, and that's something that can be discussed. Me as a sort of a recruiter, obviously we work in quite a confidential environment, so we would sort of ask them questions and sort of yeah, really sort of be honest on the CV. And I would definitely if you've got any gaps missing or sort of like career breaks or anything like that, make sure you're honest with them dates so they can sort of build a picture and sort of probe on them questions.
Another question here: should I send my CV around as a PDF or a Word document?
I have two versions. So I have a PDF. I'm forever sort of have a Word version because that's more editable. So the Word version you can definitely edit a lot better than the PDF, and then I will just replace that PDF I have every time I update the Word document to a PDF. So definitely have both. As a recruiter, we love to see a Word version because we sort of look at it and we sort of come back with sort of key points. But I think the final sort of definition of copy would put a PDF over to the client or over to the employer, but definitely have sort of two on there.
Okay, thank you. You advise not to use generic terms like good team player. What's the best way to state that?
Yeah, so good team player is quite generic. A lot of people, we see it on CV, probably I'd say probably 9 out of 10. I'd put sort of like an example around how you've been a team player. So a good example would be how you've been part of a team and you've influenced that, or how you've delivered something to achieve that, or how you've achieved something within that team. So I would put a brief sentence how I was part of a team and we achieved as a team, we delivered this amount, or we delivered this project, or we as a team we come together and I was a key influential part of that team. I think good team player. We're all good team players, and that's so yeah, on that side.
Okay, cool. We've got another question from Liz. How can you make your CV transitional to a job that you have never done, but your skills are transferable? I.e., I'm currently a complaints manager, so I have a vast experience of customer service level.
Good question. So this is a tough one. So transitional to a job that you've never done before. Really home in on them skills and really sort of have them skills that they show that they're transferable to that job. So it comes back to that key skills part at the top. You really want to sort of home in and make sure that your skills are understanding for the job you're applying for. And me as a recruiter or the employer would want to read, okay, I need to read on. And then I would also in your profile, you want to say obviously how niche you are in what you do at the moment and how you can transfer. I would definitely say you have put something in there about how you have transferable skills and how you sort of done that. So you're saying you're currently a complaints manager, vast experience of sort of customer service level that can cross over into so many fields. So just making sure you're getting the best out of your customer service sort of like skill set, coming in from sort of that complaint sort of exposure you've had, and how that can sort of implement the new job that you're applying for, how you can implement them skills into that new job. So yeah, there's definitely transferable skills in all sort of like jobs out there, and it's how you sort of deliver that on the CV and really get them points across in that key skills bracket. And then going into your sort of job history, you want to sort of touch on them skills and how you sort of influenced a project, or once again, sort of a key example around how you can sort of influence the new job going forward.
Okay, thank you. Next question. If I'm changing careers, can I explain that in my personal statement, and how long can that be?
You can put it in your personal statement, and that so I would definitely yeah, you can change that. I would say no more than sort of like a few sentences, so like more than a paragraph. You don't want to sort of go on to the employer about how you want to sort of change sort of careers too much. You want to sort of get your key skills sort of across to them and why you'd be the right person for the job. So yeah, in your personal statement, you can definitely put something in there about how you're sort of looking to change careers, because it comes back to that question before where Liz had, you're looking to sort of transfer your skill set over. So that has why you think you're the right fit for that job, because you've got skills in certain areas, and having sort of so much sort of experience that you can bring into the new role with the skills that you've learned in your previous roles.
Thank you. What if I've worked more than 10 years with one organisation?
Yes, if you've worked more than 10 years organisation, that's brilliant. So I would definitely, you'd probably have quite a long first job at the top of your page. So people I've seen sort of have that. I would definitely sort of home in on that, and that would probably come up to probably about half a page, I would say. So we go back to the point, obviously we said about 6 to 8 bullet points, but if you've been in that job 10 years, you're going to have a lot of experience and a lot of exposure to a lot of things over the time. So don't be scared to sort of just put 6 bullet points for one role if you've been there 10 years. Really elaborate on that 10 years and what you've learned. And then you can sort of add probably 2 or 3 sort of jobs after that. So don't keep it sort of keep it to that 2, 3 pages, as we said before. But if you're in 10 years within one organization, you could really sort of home in and sort of show your key sort of skills, your key deliverables, what you've learned from that role and what you've achieved through that role. So that's something that you can definitely, yeah, I wouldn't be alarmed and sort of worried about sort of adding sort of 10 years in one organization. Just keep it going.
Okay, thank you. Should I keep the work experience that's relevant to the job I'm applying for separate from other experience? For example, having 2 sections, relevant work experience and other work experience.
I well, just going to read that through again. So, should I keep the work experience that is relevant to the job I am? Yes, to answer that question, I would keep the relevant work experience you have in the job you're in. Keep that relevant. If you're applying for a separate with other experience, I would definitely have on your CV the relevant work experience you've done at the top. And if there's other work experience that you have done, that will reflect in the CV as you work your way down to the CV. So something I've seen in the past is where right at the end of the CV, once you've sort of done your career history and you've sort of done sort of like your hobbies and interests, I've seen people have other work experience. Once again, keep that quite short, quite niche, to the point, and keep it relevant to the actual job. No more than sort of 5 bullet points. So keep that relevant work experience to the job that you're applying for, if it has a relevance in there. If it doesn't have a relevance in there, I wouldn't personally put it in.
Okay. Next question. I do not have much experience. Can I make my education section more prominent?
Of course. Yeah, definitely. And that if you're just starting out in your career, and sort of like you've got some really sort of education pieces on there, really sort of home in on sort of like your education piece. I would, yeah, more than sort of happy to see sort of what you've done sort of throughout your education. And then obviously put a sort of some key sort of modules or certain things that you've done or certain achievements even throughout your sort of education sort of like history. So if there's anything you feel like sort of needs to stand out in the CV, whether you've won an award within the education when you've been at sort of like school or sort of higher sort of leaving or sort of level, if you've won sort of, or if you've sort of directed or had some responsibilities even within your education. If you haven't got sort of much work experience on there, you may have experience and the skill set that you probably wouldn't realize by taking on extra responsibilities maybe in your sort of academic career. So that's something that you can definitely add in and sort of really sort of key it out and really sort of go home in on really detail, that will really stand out to someone.
Thank you. Next question. If there is an employment gap, do you still look at that CV?
100%, 100% we would. Me as a recruiter, I'd probably come and sort of, if there wasn't a reason on there, so some people sort of just put a date and just say obviously unemployed or unemployment. So I would sort of come and sort of ask the question and sort of we'd have a confidential chat around that. But yeah, we 100% look at the CV. A lot of sort of employers do look at the CVs with people that sort of had employment gaps, because obviously there's a reason sort of behind it, or there may be sort of some sort of case behind why they haven't sort of found the right job for them yet. And it's just getting an understanding from you as the candidate and us as the sort of employer to understand, okay, why has this happened? How can we sort of help going forward? So yeah, definitely put the employment gaps in there. Yeah, and we definitely 100% look at the CV.
Thank you. We don't seem to have any more questions in our inbox. We do still have 10 minutes left of Jamie, if anyone can think of anything to pop in there. Oh, one's just come in again, another one from Arnie. Recently graduated in human resource management, but struggling to get a job in the HR field. Any advice?
Speak to us. Speak to us as recruiters.
Jamie, can you drop your email address in the chat so she can do that?
By all means. And yeah, listen, I haven't worked in the HR field, but obviously I deal with a lot of HR people within the sort of housing association sector. One thing I would definitely do is speak to recruitment agents out there. Don't be scared to sort of pick up the phone or send sort of a CV or ask them for sort of help and support. We're there to help and support people throughout sort of everything. So HR field, human resource management is quite not my niche, so I wouldn't like to sort of guess on there. By all means, you sent your email address in. I'll send you an email after, but it may be a case of, obviously we've done the CV part. Maybe it may be good to maybe put like a supporting statement together, and that's something that we can take offline. I'm happy to sort of yeah, look at a supporting statement and sort of we can get some key things on there of why we can sort of have a look at that.
Okay, thank you. AJ's just sent a question in. It's quite long. Hopefully I'm not going to fluff these words up. I'll give it a go. When he mentioned no roles, which was several years back, I had worked with Citibank for 4.5 years before 9/11. I feel that's significant for me. So still, also be selective tailoring to role. I have professional qualifications equivalent to an ICAEW and CIMA plus an MBA in finance in London. A recruitment consultant had once said to me years back that you're too overqualified. Employers avoid that as they think you won't stick and will move on to the next job.
Well, it's not the best recruitment person you spoke to, I don't think, because yeah, I definitely
get in touch with Jamie.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think we can sort of, yeah, they shouldn't be saying that sort of things to you, saying you're overqualified. No one's ever overqualified for something, and I think it's all about how you deliver that. And it's also how we deliver that as recruitment consultants to our sort of clients. But I think people would definitely sort of look at that. If going back to the first point, when you sort of mentioned several years back, you'd worked at sort of Citibank for 4.5 years before 9/11. If you feel that's significant for you, definitely put it on there. I would definitely sort of put that. If you think you're going for a job with the sort of key sort of skill sets and sort of key deliverables for a role, and you think you've done that sort of 4.5 years ago where you're sort of transitioned into that, make sure you get that point across. If you think that's something that needs to be on there, but listen, keep it to the point and keep it to relevant to how it is. You've got your professional qualifications sort of on there, definitely put them on there. If they say you're overqualified for the role, there may be a reason behind that. So I would definitely push back and probe the recruitment consultant why that was. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I don't think employers would avoid sort of won't stick and move on to the next job. I think that comes down to how things are managed and how the interview process has happened. So and how we manage it as consultants to say, right, this is the person we've got, these are the qualifications we've got, this is why we think they're the right person for the role. For an agency and a recruitment consultant to come out to that side, yeah, I wouldn't distinguish that at all.
We've got another question here from Luann. I'm working as a project worker in supported accommodation, supporting vulnerable adults. I want to go on to work in social housing as a tenancy officer or similar. Does my lack of experience in social housing and lack of knowledge, rehousing legislation, etc., go against me?
Good question. So if I'm honest, I'm probably not best placed for that, as I focus on the construction side, even though I work with housing associations. I'd never say never. I'd never say no to anything without looking at it. I think just to give a bit of an overview of what we're seeing in the marketplace at the minute, it's very competitive out there. There's more jobs than ever. There's more candidates probably than ever, and there's definitely sort of people that they're open to sort of training people. And I think coming back to the whole housing association ethos, why we work with them, it's given opportunity. So it's given opportunity to people, but we need to make sure obviously we've got the right skill set. So if you feel like your skill set lies within that sort of area, and you've looked at the sort of research you've done sort of through your Google searches and your CV, it's definitely worth a chat with someone within that organization to say, okay, what do I need to do to get to this level or get to that job role? Or reach out to someone within that field to say, okay, this is where I am currently. What do I need to do to come into this sort of field of work? Is there a certain qualification I need, or maybe even doing some work experience around in that sector that will build up the sort of knowledge and the sort of expertise in that area? So that's something that we've definitely done.
Okay, another question from Liz. Thanks, Liz. Does age have any impact on a job role?
No, not at all, and that not at all, and that's so it shouldn't have any sort of impact on there at all. I've seen people at sort of all ages, but never put age on a CV, and that was something that we've always sort of never put age on a CV because it's not required. So people sort of, I've had interview from sort of like junior level, sort of up to senior level, for all ages. So yeah, it doesn't have an impact on any job role. I think it all depends on how you deliver your CV, how you deliver your experience, how you deliver the certain criteria that the sort of employer is looking for. So if you're the right person for the job and you sort of have the skill set and you interview and you're the right person, age doesn't matter.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the end of the questions. Jamie, is there anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. Listen, it's been an honour to be part of this. And listen, if there's anything else, feel free to sort of reach out to myself. And listen, I'll be more than happy to sort of take any sort of other questions that you sort of may have in the future, or come through the correct channels. And I'm sure people will get in touch with ourselves. And yeah, happy to sort of maybe jump on and do another session sometime.
Brilliant. Thank you, Jamie. Massive thank you to you and to all of you for joining us today. We do have 9 other sessions that are running throughout the remainder of the day, so please sign up to those or have a look at them if you wish to. All the recordings from all of them will be available on our YouTube channel, and all the slides will be available on our website. I do believe by the end of the day, I think, if not, definitely by tomorrow morning. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for coming. See you soon.
Take care.
Good luck with your job search.